I'm Ariana, and my business is Lloyd Collective, and I also do a lot of clinical supervision. So you might have heard of me from one of those two places. But these are our monthly fundraising workshops where we come together and learn a bit more about private practice or ideally about liberation practices. And we create some community and also do a little bit of wealth redistribution. So in the middle of today, we're going to pause and donate to an organization that Devin chose that helps with a lot of Portlanders in need. And they're going to hop on too, actually at 12:30 and tell us a little bit about their organization and who your funding will go towards. But I asked Devin to join us because one of the main themes I see people struggle with in private practice is it's not like providing therapy services. And it's not all the things you would think of. It's the managing it all that's the trickiest part, because you don't have someone else coming in and saying, here's the structure, here's your schedule, here's what you need to do today, and you're going to get in trouble if you don't do all of this. So like it requires you to like really up your executive functioning game, which is not, that's not I don't know, it's just not the thing that we all love, and it's tricky. And this happens to be something Devin's actually really skilled in and has made a great business, actually 2 businesses now, from helping people do this. So I wanted to get her expertise and see what we can learn. So it's all you, Devin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for the intro. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see it okay?
Yeah, it looks great.
Oops, I don't want to share. I want to do
about an hour. Want to come? Yep.
Okay, so thank you for having me. I love talking about time management. My hope is to not share just a listicle of hacks and tools, although I will share a PDF after this with some of my favorite tools and resources. But I really want to talk about time management in a different way, because I think we skip some things when we talk about our relationship to time. I also want to note up at the top that this is like a super duper condensed version of my time management presentation. So if you are on the path to changing your relationship to time, or you feel inspired to change your relationship to time, my info is at the bottom. Please always feel free to reach out. You can email me, you can contact me on Insta. I love making new friends. Okay, so let's dive in. So first, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about myself. That's me. I am a certified online business manager. I am Portland's first certified online business manager. And I'm from Florida, but I consider Portland to be my home. And I love roller skating. I recently broke my wrist, so I've taken a break from roller skating, but I'm hoping to dive back in over the summer. And I'm an Enneagram type 7. If you know about the Enneagram, let's talk, let's be friends. I'm very obsessed with it. So I wanted to start by talking about why I personally am passionate about time management. This is a picture of me when I was 19 dancing at Disney. I'm from Florida, and so growing up, all of our vacations took place at Disney World. And I loved going for obvious reasons. I still love going to Disney. But what I found when I was little is, even though I loved our trips to Disney, what I really hated was my mom had a really rigid schedule that we had to follow. When we were eating, when we were going to this, that, the other show, which rides we were going on when. And, as a kid, I'd see all these things. My eyes were so big, I wanted to be spontaneous, and my mom would never let me, and I always hated her for that. And then when I was in 8th grade, we took a field trip to Disney, and it was my first time being able to go to Disney on my own without my family. And I was so excited to be spontaneous and not have any schedules to follow. And I bet you can guess what happened. I did about 25% of the things I normally did at Disney because I didn't manage my time well. I missed all the shows I wanted to see. I spent a lot of time waiting in line for rides. It was a total mess. And that's when I realized my mom wasn't just being a control freak. Disney is really expensive, and she wanted to squish as much fun into that day for us as she possibly could. So that was the first lesson I learned about, wow, if I manage my time differently, I can have more fun. And so the reason I am so passionate about time management is because life is short. We don't know how much time we have. We all have vivacious goals and things we want to accomplish. I know I have a lot of things I want to do, and I know if I manage my time well, I can squeeze as much in as possible and really enjoy my life. So let's roll back. I would like to talk about what it even means to have poor time management skills. The first, I think, more obvious or more accepted definition is if you aren't completing tasks on time, or maybe you're not completing them at all, or maybe you're late to everything, or you miss meetings, and that means you have bad time management skills. But I would actually like to challenge that and say, to me, when you have poor time management skills, it means that you feel stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out when it comes to your time. And so maybe you are getting everything done, but you feel exhausted and you're totally burnt out. On the other hand, I work with a lot of really successful entrepreneurs who maybe they don't get everything done on time, or maybe they don't do all of the tasks that they're supposed to do, but they have a great relationship to time because they know what's important and they get the important things done, and they feel good about their relationship to time. So before we step into more of the tactile ways to change your relationship to time, I want to talk about our mindset. So if you're feeling overwhelmed when it comes to your relationship to time, there are a few reasons this might be happening. Maybe you have all the time to get everything done, but you're just not making the best use of time. I think that's normally what we think of. Or maybe you commit to more time than you actually have. I have some friends that are therapists, and they become therapists because they want to help people. They're helpers. And so they say yes to everyone because they want to help, but then they don't actually have that amount of time to do all these things. It's different for everyone who struggles with time management, but I would like to say if you consistently struggle to make good use of your time and feel good about it, you might have an addiction to your poor time management habits. And what does that even mean to have an addiction to poor time management? We'll kind of jump into this in the next few slides, but we're raised with stories about how we're supposed to be in the world. Like maybe we have to do everything and do it all and be a superhuman. Or maybe being hyper productive makes us feel calm in a chaotic world. Whatever it is, sometimes being really overwhelmed is actually our comfort zone, and that's why we keep making choices. I have so many clients and friends who fit into this category where every conversation I have with them, they tell me how overwhelmed they are. They say, Devin, I'm waving the white flag, I can't do this anymore. And then in the same conversation, they'll tell me that they signed up for 3 more speaking engagements that are unpaid and aren't furthering their career because it would help someone out. And so there's kind of this weird tug of, well, I keep making these choices, but maybe there's a different way. So I want to talk about some thought patterns. And I think when I say these old thoughts, I think these are things we're taught based on the type of society we live in. I think a lot of our habits around time are based on what worked best for maybe straight white cis men in the 50s when the 40-hour work week was in place. And I want to challenge some of these old thoughts. Okay, the first old thought: if I say yes to everyone, no one will be disappointed in me. A new thought is setting kind boundaries is good for everyone. An old thought: if I don't do it all, I'll be a failure. A new thought could be, every human's different, every path is different. There's no such thing as failure. An old thought is, if I flake on the commitments I've made, I won't be a person of integrity. But a new thought is, life happens and I'm allowed to take care of myself. I'm going to pause a few times in this presentation and just note that having broken my wrist in December and then having surgery a few weeks ago threw my life for a loop in ways that I didn't anticipate. I had to flake on a lot of commitments, and it was really hard despite me kind of preaching, these thoughts about time management. I had to take a step back and take a little bit of my own medicine of, wow, if I cancel all of these meetings and interviews that I had, will I still be seen as like this amazing entrepreneur that I want to be? But things happen. Everyone's been getting COVID lately, and a lot of things are being canceled because of that, and that's okay. So throughout this process, I also want to leave people with the idea that when you're trying to work through changing your relationship to time, you have to really be gentle with yourself. Managing your time is not a science, it's an art form. It's constantly in flux because your life is always changing. It requires your attention. If you really want to make a change, you have to be really dedicated. But it does get easier over time as you build new habits and a new way of looking at your schedule and your time. Okay, so now we're going to dive into what I consider to be the steps to ultimate time management. These are 4 steps I'm going to talk about that I use, that I think work really well. Take them, try them out, maybe put your own spin on them. The first step is to really, really know yourself. The second step, we're going to track our time. The third step is we're going to talk about energy cycles. And the fourth step is to schedule it. So I always like to start this part of the presentation to talk about, I have certain privileges. I don't have any kids. I make my own schedule. I can work from home. I have my own office. So I'm starting from a pretty good place when it comes to how I can manage my own time. But everybody's starting from somewhere different. Maybe you're neurodivergent. Maybe you have ADHD. Maybe you have executive functioning stuff. Maybe you have health issues or a disability that affects your energy. I know I get really, really fatigued in the afternoon, like way too fatigued. Since I broke my wrist, my left hand has been 80% unusable or 100% unusable. And it takes me 1/3 of the time it normally does. Sorry, opposite. I'm moving at 1/3 of the pace I usually do. And that really affected the way I managed my time these past few months. When it first hit, we all started working from home. Maybe you suddenly have to be around your kids or suddenly you have to co-work with your partner. And it's not ideal when you're trying to structure your day. Regardless of what's going on, I firmly believe that you can always get a handle on your relationship to time because we're all starting from somewhere different. I have a client who has incredibly intense ADHD and he's dyslexic and he has 4 kids and he just knows himself so well that he uses all of those things as a superpower and he does amazing things and it's amazing what he can produce in a day. Okay, second, let's talk about values. So this is a little exercise that I would encourage you to do on your own time. I think it's fun. I do this once or twice a year just because things are always changing. The first step is talking about what's really important to you and write them down on sticky notes. Health, family, your business, adventure, your spiritual practice. When you have them all written out, I want you to arrange them in order of priority because I think we all have an idea of the things that are important to us. But sometimes we have to prioritize one thing over the other. And it's helpful to lay these things out in a hierarchy. And I want to emphasize that priority is singular. Because if you have to choose, maybe one night you have the option between a networking event or getting dinner with a friend. If you feel like community is a bigger value to you, you might choose dinner with a friend. But if you're just starting your business, maybe a networking event is more important. And that's why we want to really understand what our values are and how they're prioritized. And then once you've done that, I want you to take a guess as to how much of your time goes into each category now that you've seen your values all laid out. Because if you have never done so before, please, 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 please try tracking your time. You can use pen and paper and just set an alarm for every 30 minutes, or you can use a time tracker like Toggle that makes it really easy to toggle between tasks. I beg of you, if you've never tracked your time, try it for a week. If a week is too much, try it for just a day or even a morning, because I guarantee that when you look at where your time is going, you're going to be really surprised as to where it's going. And then I would encourage you to match it to your values. If you say that your family is your biggest value, do you spend most of your time with your family or doing things to build your family? It's just a good reflection of, okay, is my schedule actually matching what I value? Okay, this slide is based on some things I learned from the book When by Daniel Pink. Highly recommended. I learned a lot. But what I want to note here is that we all have different energy cycles. There's the early bird, which is me. I wake up at like 4:35 a.m. every morning just because. The third bird, which is most people, and the night owl. And we all know the night owl stays up all night. I've seen so many articles and social media posts and videos that's like, get up at 4 a.m. for this magical morning when you get everything done, and that's how you be successful. And if you don't, you're a failure. I mean, that part's implied, but the thing is, we all have different circadian rhythms, and you need to honor what yours is. And when you know when you have higher energy in the day and lower energy in the day, you can start to put together the pieces of your day differently. For me, noon to 2 is no good. I might schedule a social event like this one because I'm an extrovert and it gives me energy, but I don't feel like it's morally okay for me to do client work at 1 p.m. because I'm exhausted and it's not going to be really great quality work for my clients. Something we all have in common, no matter what your rhythm is that the early afternoons are the Bermuda Triangle of our day. We all get the afternoon sleepies. I'm definitely going to take a long break after this workshop to take a rest. Because the thing is, if you don't take a break, your brain and body will take one for you. For me, if I try and slog through the day and work through my lunch to get it all done, like my brain just stops at 2 p.m. and then the rest of the day is just gone. Some people can just work through the whole day and then by the weekend, they're toast. I have even seen folks who will go months without taking proper rest. And I've seen businesses completely fail because the owner didn't take enough rest and then they burnt out completely. And it's really, it's heartbreaking to see. So I encourage you to, throughout the day and on the weekends, at least one day a week, take a true break where you're completely detached from your work and doing something just for you. Okay, now that we know maybe different parts of the day, we're more energized, we know what we should prioritize in our schedule, then you can start to make a schedule or a routine for yourself and schedule it in your calendar. I personally feel like you need to visually see your time. For example, this is my calendar. It might look crazy to you, but to me, because it's color coded, I know all the pink is my me time. Each client has a different color. And I know, like, for example, if this was this week for me and a client needed me to work on a project that I think maybe will take a few hours, I can look at this calendar and say, I'm sorry, I don't have time. Let me look in the future. I also want to encourage you to give yourself enough time to get into the flow. Like, don't try and schedule out time to do random things in 15 or 30-minute increments. Give yourself time to really sit down and dig into things. Time management, again, it's an art. You might have to move things around, but also when you're making a schedule or a calendar for yourself, please set boundaries and then respect them like you would a meeting with a colleague. That being said, some of us need more flexibility in our time, and you can schedule that in too. It can all be done, but making yourself some sort of schedule can help you manage your time better once you see what you've got on your plate. Okay, so what? So I always like to think about time as a metaphor from this particular game at the arcade. I was just at Wonderland, and I was reminded of that game with a big metal shelf that's pushing coins, and the more coins you put in, the more fall off the bottom, hopefully. And I see time as this big metal shelf. Time's not stopping. It's always coming at us. And the things on our plate and the things we need to do are the coins we drop in. And so here's the honest to goodness truth. Things are going to fall off the edge. Time's going to push things off the edge no matter what. Time management is choosing what is going to fall off. So don't think about, okay, how can I hack my day to get everything done? Instead of think about what are my priorities based on my values this day or this week, and what can fall off. I'm going to choose what's falling off instead of having time choosing it for me. I think we all as a society need to stop pretending like we can get it all done, because we just can't. We have too many things going on. So here's a few little extra tips, and I'm also going to put a PDF in the chat after this with like actual tools and resources. But I wanted to remind folks that things don't just take time, they take energy too. Maybe writing an email to a colleague or a friend might take, I don't know, 20 minutes, but it might take more emotional time than that. For example, when I go to therapy takes 50 minutes, but I block off 2 hours because I want to get there early. I want to sit in the lobby and like transition my brain. And then after it's done, I might need some time to process what happened. So it emotionally takes 2 hours out of my day, even though actually therapy could technically be squished into 50 minutes. I also want to touch on self-care again. I want to circle back to taking restorative breaks and why they're so important to take every day. Taking a little bit of a break is better than taking no break. Moving beats stationary, so get away from your desk, maybe go on a walk if you can. They say having a social break is better than a solo, but maybe if you have a really a job where you're talking a lot or working a lot of people and you're an introvert, maybe having a solo break is what's going to recharge you best. And again, being detached from your work and having autonomy over your break is what's going to really recharge you and allow you to continue being energized later in the day. I also want to briefly touch on the concept of an Oasis day. This is one of the resources in the PDF I'm going to put in the chat, but make sure you take off a day a week that is completely disconnected from your business. When you own your own business, it's really easy to think about it all the time, but you really truly need that break at least once a week. And that is a wrap. Let me see, let me X out of here. Thank you, everyone.
Devin, I loved it so much. Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. It's super helpful. I'm curious to know if there's any questions that came up for you as you're listening to this, or any comments or surprising things you heard. Some of the things I wrote down were, Devin, you had those 4 points: know yourself, understand your values, learn your energy cycles, and then what was the fourth one?
Sorry, say that again.
Know yourself, understand your values, learn your energy cycles.
Yes. So,
and there was a fourth
knowing
one
yourself. Well, the four steps are knowing yourself, tracking your time, learning your energy schedules, and then scheduling it. But within know thyself, there's a few different things listed.
Cool. Yeah, I noted the importance of matching your time to your values. When you said like if your family is one of your values, is that like where most of your time goes? That seems really helpful. And then that idea of taking a true break and having it include autonomy and detachment. Yeah, so many really helpful concepts here.
I have a question. Yeah. Kind of time. Well, your presentation was great. Thank you for it.
Thank you.
In regards to being new with private practice, this is my first time having a social work job, at least, where my mindset has shifted to I'm being paid hourly versus being paid a salary, because I don't have a salary anymore. So time management I've had a lot of anxiety around time, because I'm not like actually writing down and calculating, but in my mind, I'm roughly calculating all the time. Like I only meant to spend 2 hours on this, because just to throw out an example, like if I spend 2 hours on this, I got paid $100 an hour. But if then that unexpectedly took me longer, maybe 3 hours, and all of a sudden I'm not making as much money as I am intending to be making, or as I need to be making in the long run. And I'm just wondering about how to have kind of like a mentality shift around when things take longer than you think they are. And then therefore that means maybe that day you technically got paid less, even though the money amount is the same, if that
But you
makes sense.
spent more time doing it.
Yeah.
I have a few follow-up questions. Great question, thank you. Well, let me ask you this. If you're doing a task for someone who's paying you hourly and it takes you 3 hours, why would you not just bill them 3 hours for it?
So no one actually pays me hourly, but so I do evaluations where typically I meet with a client one time, and then I write a report. So it's kind of like the package of that time spent, where the client's paying me a flat fee no matter what. But sometimes I'll feel really good about the amount of time I spent on it and like, okay, I got paid the amount that I want to for that amount of hours. But then sometimes for various reasons, like the appointment takes longer, me actually writing the report takes longer. And then in my mind, I just have this like stressful voice in my mind saying like, you're not getting paid as much as you should be. You're spending way too much time on this.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. And there's a few ways to think about it. One way is if it truly does take you longer, maybe you need to raise the price of that offering. Or because you said this is kind of newer for you, is this something where the better you get at it, the shorter amount of time it'll take, and maybe this is a learning curve? The third thing to think about, which I've been doing, and because I have a similar offering where it's a set price and I have about how much time it takes, but every person's different. So the work with the client takes about a certain amount of time, and the work after takes about a certain amount of time. And what I am finding is I'm finding ways like, okay, can I ask questions before the meeting so that our time together is shorter? Are there like maybe the work after, maybe I'm doing more than they even need, and kind of finding ways like, okay, what are creative ways where I can have it take less time, because you're probably still offering like an incredible amount of value. But I think when we're starting new things, we get really nervous and we're like, I have to do an amazing job and it has to be perfect and I have to spend as much time as it takes, but maybe that's not the case.
Yeah. That is a really good reminder that obviously as time goes on, or maybe not obviously, but hopefully as time goes on, that things will become more efficient. And but I also like your idea of what sorts of things, maybe what sorts of things can I put on the clients to complete, like maybe having more robust intake paperwork or
Yes.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Having a big, giant, long questionnaire before I meet with people has like completely changed the way I work with people. It cuts a lot of time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other time management questions or concerns you're all facing in your work right now that Devin can offer her expertise on?
I guess I have a question about determining what type of the day is like legitimately my time, because I feel like I am effective at super random times of the day. And I was diagnosed as having ADHD in adulthood. And I think this is a part of that, where I will get suddenly like hyper inspired over something. And then I'll look in my calendar and I'm like, oh, this doesn't work at all with what I have scheduled, but it's stuff that I can't adjust or move. And so then that like kind of impacts my energy level. I'll be like excited about something. And I'm trying to come up with strategies around that. Like, okay, like I carry a notebook with me and I jot down the thing I'm excited about, with the idea that then like I can schedule time later to like dedicate to it. But I had heard this podcast recently where they were talking about like night owl versus morning person, and that the research shows that most people actually are neither, that like that's a really unusual outlier. But I don't feel like the middle of my day is like a useful time period. And then nighttime is sort of like, I have a teenage daughter, so that oftentimes is where I'm needed. I want to be a morning person. Like, so I don't know if you have any ideas around like maybe self-evaluation or habit making that would sort of support making one time more effective than another. I don't know. Just thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're saying that it's hard for you to, like, there's not one time of day where you feel the most energized consistently.
Right. And I often
Ooh.
find that it's part of it, I do think is seasonal. Like when the birds are chirping early, I'm like, boop, bounce out of bed. I'm not necessarily focused, but I'm like, woo, up. So yeah.
Yeah, that is a toughie. I would say, so in the book When by Daniel Pink, they have some like tests you can take to try and figure out when your time of day is.
That would be
Like
useful.
they give you like little cognitive riddles. But it sounds like since you're not consistent, that might be tough. I don't know how helpful this is, but the closest I can come to thinking of, the closest anecdote in my mind is I used to have a client who had she was chronically fatigued, and so there were some days where she was like this amazing rock star and she'd get really inspired and she'd get really deep down into things, and then some days she just like maybe had 1 hour a day. And so what we did is we just tried to make her schedule based on like what is the most consistent and / worst case scenario, to be honest, and that was like a 4-hour workday. And so the days when she had like superhuman energy, then that was just like cool bonus time. But the other thing is, I think that we kind of get this idea of like, when I feel motivated to do XYZ, like that's when I'm going to do it. And life just doesn't work that way. Like sometimes we just have to dive into things and get into the flow, and then we kind of get a little more motivated. So I know this isn't like a very helpful answer, but I think your idea of writing things down and doing them later and just blocking off, like, for me, this is kind of different, but like there are some things that I hate doing, but I know I need to do, like filming myself for Instagram reels. Like I like making them, hate filming them. So I'll just like block off a whole day, and I'm like, I'm just gonna spend the whole day on this one thing. And then eventually, like when you give yourself space, I think it's easier to kind of lean into things. I don't know if that's all helpful, but that's just kind of the thoughts coming up when I hear your situation.
No, I think that is helpful. I think sort of the idea of maybe identifying those things that are tedious and don't feel rewarding, but they're non-negotiable. It's like, just you do them. It's life.
And then you can create an artificial reward when they're done. Like you go treat yourself to sushi after you do all your taxes.
Right. If I have any money left. No, I think that's helpful. And I will look at the book because I'm not familiar with that book. That sounds useful.
Yeah. It's pretty helpful. Yeah.
I'm going to have us pause here. So the Beacon Village people couldn't make it. So Devin, I would love if you wanted to share why you chose this organization. And for all of you, if you choose to donate, then you can private message me and I'll match your donation. And we started doing this over a year ago, and we've donated, I think, almost maybe over 7,000 now to mostly local nonprofits or mutual aid organizations. So even just donating however much feels small to you, like $5, is like it makes a difference over time. And if you don't have something to donate, that's okay too. Please don't feel guilty or obligated. But yeah, Devin, I would love to hear why you chose Beacon Village, why it matters to you.
Yeah, I love Beacon Village. So I would highly recommend reading their website, because I don't think I'm even aware of all the different things that they do. But I learned about them because I do some volunteer work with some organizations that support the houseless community in Portland. For those of you who live in Portland, like we all know that the houseless crisis is pretty intense right now. And Beacon Village specifically supports the houseless community with lots of different resources. And the coolest thing is that they recently created a Beacon Village, which is basically like little tiny homes that houseless folks can live in. And so I love donating to them regularly because I know that they are like directly fighting this issue that is kind of growing in our community. But yeah, they're an awesome organization, awesome people. Highly recommend.
Thanks, Devin. And do you help with their shower program?
Yeah, so they don't do the shower program. The Sunnyside Neighborhood Association does the shower program where folks can sign up to take a shower at the Sunnyside Community Center, and they work closely with some folks at Beacon to help get resources out to the community.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks, Devin. Yeah, Devin normally would charge for a workshop like this. And so instead of doing that, she's donated her time and energy in support of Beacon Village, which is awesome. Thanks for doing that, Devin. And then, of course, you can choose to work with Devin. She does really great, like 1-day kind of fix your whole business workshops. That's what I'm calling them, Devin. But like clean up all of your systems, right? And
kind of.
yeah,
I do.
maybe it'd be better for you to.
That is included in what I do. I do quarterly planning intensives where I help people plan the next quarter or the next 90 days of their business. And it goes pretty deep. And within that, we review your team, your tech, your systems, your client experience, kind of anything you've got going on. We do lots of stuff, but definitely within that, we look at, how are your systems doing, and kind of focus on like, okay, if these are your high level goals and this is the type of business owner that you want to be and this is your vision, what projects in the next 90 days, what 3 to 5 projects are going to take us there? And then what do those projects entail? And so the first half is a co-working session with business owners where we dive in and figure out what the next 90 days look like. And then the second half of the day, this is where I have to manage my own time, is where I then make that 90-day plan and put it in their project management tool so that they and their team can then just run with it for the next 90 days. And then we meet every 90 days and we rinse and repeat.
That's really nice. A lot of people, the further they get into the business, like if they start to want to, eventually most therapists want to have less just one-to-one, and they want to either do groups or some kind of other thing. But making that transition takes time and energy that maybe you don't have because you're doing all one-to-one services. And so a lot of people eventually really benefit from sitting down with someone and then, first of all, clarifying exactly what that is that they want to create next, but then breaking it down into really doable tasks, having all the tasks laid out in front of them, and then knocking them out one by one. So that makes sense, Devin, that's what you're doing with people. That's really nice.
Yeah, I love doing it, and I think it's super fun for me, so we have a good time.
Yeah, that's good. That's really nice. All right, I'm going to switch to this tool that I wanted to share with all of you. Very briefly, though, you all already know me. I think I work with many of you already, but I do an 8-week private practice program where people set up their practices, or I do one-on-one business consultation, either for the setting up your practice or when you make that big transition, like I just talked about, either to restructure your practice or create something new to go with it. And I really try to incorporate, even as a person who's white and has many privileges, incorporate a lot of anti-racism practices and be really thoughtful and mindful in what I'm helping other people create as well, so that we're doing something that works for everybody. So what I wanted to share was a tool that I created in Notion, and it's really funny, Devin, because it matches most of what you talked about. I was like, we were totally thinking along the same lines with time management. So what I want to do, and we'll keep this really brief, is have you either pull up a Word doc or a pen and paper, and I'm going to have you write 3 categories. One is self, one is business, and then the third is home. And in each of those, just really briefly off the top of your head, write the main tasks that go into those, or the main activities you find yourself doing on repeat in each of those categories. We'll just take just a minute or two here, and you can always, of course, experiment with this later. Does that feel like enough time to kind of get at least some main concepts down? You'll want to fill it out later as well. But let's see. I wanted to share when the first year or two of doing a business, I would get overwhelmed at least once a week and feel like I was having panic attacks, and have to like call my sister crying. And what I realized was you're creating and organizing so much that you just get overloaded. There's no way around the fact that that's what you're doing. And for me, a tool that works all the time is just creating a huge list of everything and then mapping it out. Like that's just, and even now I'll still have days like that because that's just how life seems to work. So making lists, putting them into categories, and then I'm going to show you this tool. So if you do feel overwhelmed or have to call someone and cry, I want you to know that that's just normal. It's the cost of doing business for yourself versus like calling your sister to cry because your boss is mean. Now you're calling them about something else. So this is the cost, and I think it's a way better price to pay, and way more fruitful. Like the outcome is way better. So share screen. All right. This is what I want to show you.
Oh, Ariana, you're muted. There you are.
You hear me? Yeah, okay. I forgot that Zoom does this. Okay. So I'm going to share this with all of you, but what I'm suggesting that you do is you take each of these, we've got all of our days of the week here, and we could drag the Sunday actually over to here. And what I'm suggesting that you do is theme each of your days. And so like Sunday could be your home day, or your self day. Let's say Wednesdays you want to be your home day. Fridays would be maybe admin, although I've definitely heard people say if you need a full day for your admin, you have too many tasks, you should be hiring out. So you'll take each of these and give a theme to each day, which may not be a new concept for you, but it's really helpful to go back to in case like everything starts to muddle together again, which definitely happens. And then you're going to take these general tasks that you find yourself doing on repeat. And let's say you always want to start your day off with clinical. Then you're going to group your tasks to each of those days. And then you could, if you want to, do what Devin did, which is, I think we're using Google Calendar, Devin. Then schedule them out. But the main goal here is that, I love the creative days, is that you intentionally have the set pattern and routine, and it's really clean and really simple, and you can repeat it, and it works for you. Because I get a lot of people who come to me a few years or 5 or 10 years in private practice, and it doesn't work for them, and now they want to restructure and have a nap every day from 1 to 2, which I think is the best idea ever. So this is a way to kind of make sure, hey, am I actually creating something that I love? If what I'm doing right now I don't love, what should I change, or what should I move around? So I'm going to put all these guys back, and then I'm going to give you a template of this, and you can just play around with it and see what works for you. The trick is to keep this in mind and then intentionally do it every week, because what is going to happen is your emails will want to go into everything, or everything really likes to take over everything else, like small children and a clean house. So I'm going to share this with all of you in the chat. You're going to need to have a Notion account set up, and then it should, and then it'll prompt you to create a duplicate of it. And then once you do that, it'll go into your Notion like dashboard. But any questions or thoughts on that?
I love it.
Devin, how does it match up with how you work with your clients?
I mean, it's very similar to, I think, like you said, a lot of things I talked about is how do we block out time and dedicate time for certain things. Like when I first learned about calendar blocking, the way it was described to me is, when you're in high school, at a public school, or I guess most schools, you have like an hour for science and you're just thinking about science. And then when science is done, you're not thinking about science anymore. And then you have an hour for math, and kind of just theming days or times of day. Like Monday is my CEO day. And so, yeah, I think, and then it gives you the permission to just not use brain space for other things when you're in that theme.
Yeah. The other thing you can do is optimize it for the days when you're more likely to be motivated to do certain things or less. So optimize it for, like Devin mentioned, for energy level or creativity. This is probably true for everyone. The first half of the week, I'm way more motivated. Thursday and Friday, I'm like, we're almost to the weekend. So like stuff that has to get done should go on the first half of the week, because I'll be like, my motivation will just kick in a lot more naturally. Any other questions or thoughts with any of this before we wrap up?
This is a self-compassion question, which is because I just did something really similar. I find a lot of comfort in creating Excel spreadsheets. So I just did this. It's just one of those things when things are too chaotic, where I'm nervous about my private practice. I'm like, let's just create an Excel spreadsheet. That will help. So I just did this. And my question is like, both of you are, and probably many of the people on this call are doing a really great job with this. How do you have self-compassion when you screw it up, right? Like you said, like Friday's the day that I'm going to read that awesome book that's going to change my life. It's going to change the lives of the people I serve. And like a whole month of Fridays go by and you didn't crack the cover because you were like spinning out because you were having, kind of a lot of panic, or just trying to get the things done, or flooded with intake. So that's just kind of a question, like, what do you do there? Just curious on
Rebecca, this is just the best question ever. I really appreciate it, because this is really at the heart of it underneath. Yeah, Devin, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm like jumping at the bits to answer this one. Yeah, I mean, self-compassion is the word. Whenever things don't go the way I planned, instead of seeing them as a failure, I see it as information. So if I had planned to do XYZ on Friday, every Friday for the month, and it just doesn't get done, instead of using words like lazy or whatever, whatever I want to use, instead I say, okay, clearly that's not working. Let me understand why, and then change it so that it does work. So maybe Wednesday is a better day, or maybe I need to have like a bonus Saturday, or it just asking why, and then like putting on a detective hat, and then you can solve the problem. And and you know, giving yourself space to feel disappointed and to feel sad and to feel compassionate, you know, like you would a friend.
Yeah,
Talk
no,
to
this
yourself
is
like you would a friend.
this is great. This is an ACT approach to it. I was just curious if there was any kind of, I don't love the term hack because it just sounds weird. I never loved that word because I used to do press work and it has a really different context. But just the idea that, you know, getting kind of left brainy on it, because you feel, letting yourself feel the disappointment and then being really curious about that. So I really appreciate that feedback, just to remind myself that like left brain is often the way to go. Thank you.
Totally.
I have a spreadsheet that I've started that I'm going to share with my clinical supervisees, but it's called Wins for Winners Who Win. And it's just for them to keep track of all the good feedback they get and all the good outcomes people get, and just get in the habit of tracking it. So whenever you have those moments, you pull up in your spreadsheet and you're like, big deal. Like, I've done so many good, amazing things. So like, I'm tired now. And it's okay if I didn't read the book today. Because sometimes I think in those moments we forget that we've actually been doing so much, and our brain can be like, you've never done anything, you know. So to kind of counteract that self-talk, we've got a
I've heard
spreadsheet.
something similar, Ariana, about that like everyone who has a to-do list should also have a done list, because the to-do list never ends, but being able to see everything you actually did instead of feeling like you just always have more to do be really gratifying.
Absolutely. And I can't underscore enough like the value of having humans that you can call and like share all of it with, and then they can hold it for you and remind you that you're amazing. I think we can't grow a business by ourselves. All right, that's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for donating. Yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you, Devin, for your really lovely presentation. All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you.